Hello, this quick video is just a quick few tips on how to approach the writing. Watch this before you start the writing and it will give you a few little tips and help you get better with the writing. And remember, we're working on paper 1, the language GCSE paper, and the writing overall element. This will be worth 25% of your overall GCSE, and with the other writing task, question 5 on paper 2, this means that the writing is worth 50% of your overall GCSE. And to get a grade 4, you do need to be looking about 50% in terms of grade. So it is really, really important that we get this writing right. Right, quick points before we start going through the tips that I've got for you. Number 1, aim for 3 paragraphs. You can write more, but bear in mind that this isn't about pages and pages of writing. So don't assume that if you've written 17 pages that you're going to get a high grade. But just remember that if you don't use paragraphs, then it will cost you grades. So really it's, you're looking at a grade 1, maybe a 2 if you don't use paragraphs. It does limit your writing completely and we have to mark you down because of it. So make sure you use paragraphs. Repeat my point there, really. Quality is more important than quantity. So we're looking for 3 good, decent paragraphs and not the first thing that comes to mind. Spelling, punctuation, vocabulary and sentence structure are really, really important. You may not have the best of ideas, but the spelling, punctuation, vocabulary and sentence structures could actually improve your writing quite easily. And so it's those. So your writing will be assessed on 2 things. Your content and your organisation, that's one element. The second element is spelling, punctuation and grammar and vocabulary. So those 2 things. So you can do badly in the content and organisation and do really well in the spelling, punctuation. So it is the thing that can lift you up. Planning is key. We've said this before. Make sure you plan your writing. You cannot write a good piece of writing from the top of your head. So think, plan it, spend at least about 10 minutes just thinking about what you're going to write. And if you're not sure how to plan, go and have a look at one of our previous videos because that will show you. Key thing, you're writing for the examiner and not your friends. So don't write the piece of writing that you want to read. Write for what the examiner would be interested in. And remember that the examiner is often quite boring, a bit like me. So you've got to think about what would interest the examiner, not what would interest your friends. Description is more important than plot. Okay, you've only got 3 paragraphs, so there's not much plot you can fit in. So even if it's a case of somebody falling over, that could be your plot. We're not looking for complicated plot. What we're looking for is the description. And so put the plot at the back and focus on the description. Now remember, this is what we're doing, and you've seen this task before. This is what you can have for the assessments. You can have a picture or a story. Right, we're going to go through our tips then. So, tip number 1, mundane, not drama. So, with your writing, go for something that is ordinary, but try and make it interesting. That's why I've shown a picture of a paper bag. Focus on the paper bag, and you could sort of describe the paper bag, talk about whose paper bag it is, the story behind the paper bag, what's going to happen. Has the paper bag been abandoned? Has it been left on its own? What's happening with it? That's the kind of writing that we want. We don't want 6, 7 superheroes battling to save the world. You can't fit that kind of writing in 3 paragraphs. So focus on the paper bag and not the superheroes. Tip number 2. Now, if you have a look, some fashionable pictures there I've just found off the internet. These are different camera shots. Okay, and some people, and if we have a look at the medium long shot, he's a bit like Simon Cowell. He's got his top tucked into his trousers. Now, key thing to do is think about your writing in an interesting way. So one way to do that is through camera shots. So thinking about the different types of camera shots that you might have. So you might be zooming in, you might zoom out, you might focus on one tiny little bit of detail. You might look down on something, you might look up at something, or you might look at it in a tilted way. Another thing to think about is lighting. Lighting's a really good thing, because what it can do, lighting, is it can connect things together, because you may have one thing in one part of the room and another thing in the other part of the room, and you may have trying to get from one thing to another, but it may not be something that moves. So you could say that the light reflects, or it casts the shadow on something else. So lighting is really, really good. Movement between objects. So yes, whatever you're describing, you might want to think about how you could connect those things. So lighting is one way, sound is another way, movement or people, that's another way. Spend a moment describing one thing in great detail and write a whole paragraph. Okay, what a lot of people worry about with this kind of writing is they think they've got to mention everything. Don't mention everything. And it's sometimes much better if you do that than actually describing everything, because what you end up doing that way is getting a list, and that doesn't make for great reading. What would be good is you focus on 3 different things and then try and link them together. Links and connections between things. So for example, if you see a reflection in the mirror, try and link it to the person, or link it into something else in the room, so that you're making interesting connections in your writing. Top tip here: repetition, mirroring and foreshadowing. So we've seen those in writing, we see those in Dickens and Shakespeare, so think about how we could have those things there. So for example, repetition of a phrase or a word, or a repetition of a way that how something moves. So maybe an animal moves in one particular way, the trees move in that way, and then maybe a person moves that. So you're linking things together. Or you could mirror, so you could have, say for example, something breaking, and then you could mirror that with 2 people breaking their relationship up. Or you could have foreshadowing, to give little clues of what's going to happen at the end. Tip number 3, vocabulary for effect. So this is a really, really key thing. Alright, a lot of people, and this goes back to sort of primary school, where you have your wow words and you try and chuck words in there to make it sound really, really interesting. Okay, now if we have a look at this example here, the light shone down, the light gazed, stared, pointed, bled. Now those words aren't really wow words as such, but what they actually do is they add meaning. And so from saying that a light shone down, gaze down, makes the atmosphere seem quite positive, and it's kind of looking at something lovingly, so it might be a romantic mood. The light stared down. Staring is kind of a negative verb, and it suggests that people aren't happy. Pointed down is quite aggressive, and it gives that idea that maybe the light is angry and there's something bad going on here, and it's accusing. The light bled down. So bled makes us think of blood and bleeding, so the idea that this is a very negative atmosphere. Now those words themselves, the words in red, are verbs, but it's the choice of those verbs that adds to the effect and the meaning, not having hundreds of words that most people wouldn't use normally. And what we're looking for is that you use verbs like this effectively, and actually what you're trying to do is you're trying to create a particular effect and a particular idea, and that's what examiners are looking for. We're not looking for the most impressive words, we're looking to see that you've used words for a particular effect. That's what we're looking for. So avoid chucking every clever word that you know, and think about the word choices that you use. Now if all it takes is just slowing down a bit and thinking about things in a bit more detail. Number 4. Right. Now this is an interesting one. We want you to be a bit like James Bond. So James Bond, okay, doesn't attack everything. He takes his time, he thinks about things, he's stylish, he wears the best clothes, but it's not colourful. Okay. In opposite to that, we've got Austin Powers. And if you haven't come across Austin Powers, suggest you do. I'm sure you'll be able to find them somewhere out there, but Austin Powers is kind of the antithesis, the opposite of James Bond. He's gaudy, he's colourful, he's over the top, he's silly. That's the kind of writing that we want to avoid. So we don't want you to be like that. So you don't have to be overly descriptive, overly colourful. So for example, you don't have to have hundreds of similes and hundreds of metaphors and lots of adjectives, because what that does is that shows that you're trying too hard, and it can be confusing and distracting because you're trying to give the examiner one simile and then they've got 4 other similes, and in their head they're trying to picture things and they can't. So be like James Bond, pick one simile, but make sure that simile is a good one and a really, really effective one. And James Bond is wearing tuxedo, black and white, very simple, very measured and minimal. You don't need hundreds of techniques. What you need is to be stylish with that one technique. So yes, have a simile in there, but make sure it's one simile, but it's a simile that's used well and effectively. So we want it to be stylish like James Bond and not like Austin Powers. So behave. Number 5, sorry. Okay. For 5, what we want to do is be careful with the sentence structure. Now, a lot of students, when they're writing, they often use the, it, their, this, he, she, so pronouns. And often what we're doing is we're just repeating the same sort of sentence structure. The cat was on the grass. It was lonely. There was light twinkling above it. This amazed the cat. He decided to leave. And what we get with a lot of students with their writing is they tend to repeat this. So we'll get the, it, there, or it, there, the. So, and that's pretty boring writing. And I'll be honest, when I'm marking work, if I see that lots of sentences start with those words, straight away it says to me that there's a lack of variety. And so I will look at a paragraph, and if I see the, there, and I look for th and it, that's what I'm looking for. If I see a lot of words beginning with th to start a sentence, I know it's pretty boring writing, because that structure is pretty boring. Now, it doesn't mean you can't use those sentence openings. That's fine, occasionally, once or twice in a paragraph, but not to use them all the time, because they are pretty dull and boring. So what we kind of want is we want that variety. So we've got some good sentence openings. So using a preposition. So across, under, by, near. So across the sky, the clouds were gently forming. Or we can start with a verb. So running across the sky, a bird, was doing something. Or we've got adverbs, gently, slowly, gracefully. Okay, or we could use conjunctions, although, while, as. And another way to start a sentence is with a simple simile. You remember, thinking of James Bond, going stylish and only having one, not lots of them. So thinking about, like an upturned bin, her bedroom was full of rubbish. Straight away there's that sentence, and you've got the simile straight away there. Okay, so dangerous. We don't have to avoid the dangerous sentence openings, but just be mindful that they can make your writing boring, and good sentences like that, have a look at that list there and try and learn from those. Okay, I've cheated 5.5. Well, these are a bit more tips, but I'm just going to go quickly through some other tips. So avoid cliches. Okay, we have in our brain some ready-made phrases. So for example, if we're describing a house and it's abandoned, we turn it into a dark, spooky house. And be mindful that your head has ready-made cliches. So when you're thinking and you're writing, avoid those cliches. So straight away, when we describe woods, we automatically think that they're scary and horrible woods, and we say they're spooky and eerie. So be careful of those phrases in your head. And when you're writing, think, right, is this a cliche phrase? Is this something that most people would use if they're describing this situation? And step away. This is where planning really helps you. Number 1, avoid too many people or characters or settings. My big advice is 2 characters, maximum 1 setting. Really, you've got 3 paragraphs, you can't have that much in there. So the less characters you have, the more depth you can give. The less setting you have, the more depth you can give. So try and keep it. So remember, 2 characters, 1 setting, that's the best rule to go with. And it's trying to mine those settings and those characters to get the most from them. Avoid too much dialogue. Okay, dialogue is just lazy writing. for a lot of students. So what they do is it looks like they've written a lot, but actually they haven't, because all they've done is they put dialogue, a line of speech, a line of speech, a line of speech. Okay, stick to 3 lines. Okay, use a line of dialogue. That shows the examiner that you can use dialogue, but stick to 3 lines maximum. Okay, and avoid boring dialogue like hello and how are you. Get rid of that. Avoid listing objects. I've said this before, do not mention every single thing in the picture. You can add things, you can take things away, and avoid listing. So you don't have to describe everything. Just describe 3 things if necessary and try and link them together. Avoid making your descriptions scary or creepy. That kind of links to the cliches, okay? It makes for pretty boring writing from an examiner's point of view. You know, if you can make the writing sad, but also emotional, is better than having scary and creepy. You know, scary and creepy is just bog standard writing, and it doesn't lift your writing up. What I would say is go for a really powerful emotion, a really moving emotion, rather than going scary or creepy, because we know what the tropes are. Just have a quick sort of scare, could be blurred, really dark. We end up using lots of cliches, so don't make it scary or creepy. Avoid one effect throughout the whole piece, and that links into the scary. So for example, what students tend to do with making it scary is they start with it being scary and they keep making it scary all along. Now, you know, when you watch a film, that you'll have a sad bit, a funny bit, a really serious bit, you know, a really tense bit, a dramatic bit. So what you've got to do with your writing is make sure you've got that journey of emotions. And by focusing on being scary all the time, you don't have that journey of emotions. So what you've got to do is try and go for a really powerful emotion, but go on an emotional journey. So you can start with this description being sad and miserable and lonely, and then at the end of the description make it happy. And then you've got that journey. So think of the journeys of the emotions that you want, and not just one emotion, and ditch it being scary or creepy. Right, I want to give you another practice before you have a look at the assessment and have a go at the writing. So here we've got a picture. Answers on the postcard. Which teacher sent me this picture of their holidays? I'm going to get you to pause the video. You can see the pause symbol that we've got there. When it disappears, that's when you can play the video again. Alright, so you've got a choice here of these 2 tasks. And this is what you'll have for your assessments. You've got a picture, so you've got a description there. Or you can write a story entitled A Difficult Choice. So just pause the video and spend 5 minutes, 5-10 minutes planning what you'd write for either of those things if that was in the assessment. And pause the video now. Okay, now what I'm going to do is, instead of going on the descriptive element, I'm going to have a look at the story element. Now, the difficult choice, now we've talked about this, about the mundane. Now when you get a story title like that, you have to be really careful, because the difficult choice could be about life and death, and you know, we could make it all that EastEnders, Hollyoaks type of writing, and they had to decide whether to kill somebody or not. And again, that's focusing on the drama. Okay, and really it's more dramatic, and we don't want the drama. What we want is the emotional choices. So for example, these are some of the ideas that I came up with, and you could see how it fits in. Now yes, we could have had the decision of having a story of somebody making a decision whether they should kill somebody, and the reason why they should kill them because they injured them or something. You know, we could do that, but that's drama, and we're not writing drama, we're writing about emotions. So for example, I've gone for here about taking a seat on a bus. So we could have a difficult choice about taking a seat, and again, that's a mundane thing that most people do, but we can turn it into something more powerful, because it could be about prejudice. So it could be, for example, an old lady deciding whether to sit next to a teenager, and she's making that choice, and it could be about her prejudices. We could then take that into racism and a number of different ways. You can see how we can make something very simple, and we can make a very interesting and quite emotional journey and story out of it. Deciding what to have for tea, you know, that difficult decision, you know, looking at the cupboard and deciding what to have for tea and making up. And maybe that could be a point where somebody is thinking about their life, and at that point it may be just deciding whether to have soup or pasta, but for them it's a meaningful decision, and so you can have the description of the tins. Leaving a job, you know, that person could have a job application and could be looking at that job application. There's your description of the job application, and in between we can have that, you know, them deciding whether to apply for this job or not, what are the risks behind it, what are the benefits. Deciding what to wear. Maybe somebody has gone to their cupboard and has picked out their outfit and of what they usually wear every single day, and so maybe what we could is can have a description of the clothes, and this could be about somebody reinventing themselves and looking at their clothes and looking at how boring and dull, and maybe they've got another item in their wardrobe that they never wear because they're too scared to wear it. And then that gives you that description. You can describe the clothes that they've got, their old clothes and their new clothes, and we could finish the story by them wearing their new clothes and they've changed themselves. And all interesting stories that we can have, but we're not doing a blockbuster film. You know, it's not about the drama, it's about the emotion. And that's it. Now, if at this moment you're still unsure what to do, remember you've got all the YouTube videos, watch them, and watch them again if necessary. They all work to help you make the best piece of writing. And what we want you to do is have as much opportunity, as much information and guidance to help you to make sure you do the best piece of writing. Now, we know how important now how the exams can be, because as with the current Year 11s, they've had a situation where all their work has mattered because the exams haven't happened. So this is an opportunity for you to show us what you can do and learn from the mistakes that we've mentioned here. All right, the worst thing is for us if we read something and people have not listened to our advice. So listen to the advice, okay, and give it your best shot. Okay, good luck.